My name's Scott Witt. I'm the Artistic Director of the International Order of the Sword and the Pen, and we put on the flagship event, the Paddy Crean Workshop. The IOSP is the organisation that puts on the Paddy Crean Workshop, and they do that every 2 years. It's a great place for a free exchange of ideas or a round table, and this is realised through 5 main pillars, one being movement, which could be biomechanics, could be voice, this year it's intimacy, direction, HEMA or the Western martial arts, live performance, stunts and modern martial arts.
The Paddy Crean is a place where people that are extremely passionate about their arts, their martial arts, their dramatic arts, their combat arts, can come together and be with people that are equally passionate.
The Paddy attracts some of the most talented people in their fields.
It attracts multidisciplined people, HEMA, stage combat, stunts, movement, voice, acting, clowning.
In 1998 I got a letter from Brad Waller inviting me to come and teach at the Paddy Crean Workshop, which I find flabbergasting, because stage combat in Australia is in its infancy. I'd only really been around since 1994, 93, and I found that fascinating. So I'm curious, so I pack my bags, I go. First thing I can't help but notice is this amazing location. There's snow, icicles. It's like grim fairy tales. Anyway, I walk up the hill, I get to this place, I meet Brad, and that in itself was life-changing. I get to meet Paddy himself, which I was very fortunate to do that, and many people that have been in my life ever since. And then finally, participants start arriving, hundreds of people, and I realise at that point, I've kind of come home and I'm finding my people.
The Paddy Crean Workshop came out of a time when workshops, there was nothing like it anywhere else. Brad created this round table concept. And I think that's the concept that attracted all these people from all over the world. People from all the hemispheres suddenly were arriving in this one place because we created an atmosphere where it was politically and professionally and artistically safe for them. And as a result, all this beautiful knowledge started to come out.
Many people ask, who is Paddy Crean? And I guess some people like to always say he was Errol Flynn's sort of double. He was probably a lot more than that. Paddy Crean was considered to be the dean of stage combat, and he had many students, many of who have come to this workshop. In fact, they're here today. And one of those students was Brad Waller, and Brad was the man responsible for setting up this workshop. So I'm at my first Paddy Crean, and it becomes apparent to me that people are working under a stressful situation. There's a lot of weapons to move around. Staff look a little bit stressed. Me being the type of person I am, I make an offer to David Dorsch. It might be pretty cool to have a morale officer. And I appoint myself as the morale officer, and I just see it as a task to keep people happy. And I think that entry point is what led me to become the artistic director.
The funny thing about Scott is years ago he had a class that was called Order and Chaos. And Scott, when I first met him, I kind of imagined that a lot of things with him were chaos. But as he stepped into his role as the artistic director, I learned that Scott is a lot about order. And it's wonderful because he took a lot of, artistic, out there ideas of sharing and friendship and everything. And those things are great, but you need to have some kind of order to maintain them. So in spite of the chaos that we have of all the classes and all the people that are here and everything else, Scott helped define the role of arts and define the role of what we do in the Paddy.
I was part of Paddy before Scott came on board, but Scottie showed up and made instant impact. Not just because he's incredibly talented, we know that. Logistically, he's talented. He's a great physical mover. He can take the students and expand their minds to make them better people. We know all that, but he shows up on board, instantly becomes a morale officer, which we all needed. And then when he became artistic director, we were a ship that was sailing towards an iceberg. And he grabbed the helm and created this vision, and a vision that was broader than most of us had imagined, and so inclusive and so forward thinking. He turned it into this incredible voyage. And we're all benefiting from it. I mean, I don't know how he did it, but he did it, and he's still doing it. And the groundwork he's laid out is going to influence and ensure our success for years to come.
Personally, to me, the Paddy workshop is about sharing and discovery.
It is leaving your ego at the door, bringing your entire skill set, laying it all on the table.
It's about bringing people together from all different facets of this entertainment industry, from movement to stage combat, even HEMA.
The spirit of the Paddy Crean, it's about the connections and friendships you make with people from all around the world.
People coming together from all walks of life and all disciplines, being willing to share everything that they've maybe dedicated their lives to. That's a pretty big deal.
And out of that comes this outpouring of connection that's not available anywhere else. Because here there are no agendas, there's nothing in the way, just sharing. There are conversations I have here that I can't have anywhere else because no one would be as passionate, and yet here, that conversation will be on fire and will last until 2 a.m. if we're not careful.
So what makes the Paddy Crean workshop special is the location, the fact that it's in the mountains up here in Banff, and the facilities are amazing at the Banff Centre where art can take place, and the fact that it's a round table. The fact that it's a round table makes a lot of things available, and what I mean by being available is I think it just makes space. And I don't think anyone needs to be in a rush when space is created. One doesn't need to be worried about certificates, no one needs to have the burden of making a test, no one has to do anything. You literally go into each room each day and enjoy that moment and defrag from that, go into the next class, defrag from that. And you come away with this experience, of 6 days, 4 classes a day across those 5 pillars. That's just magic. For me, the IOSP and the Paddy Crean workshop are a place of reflection. I think a bit of deep soul searching goes on because you find yourself in a location or a backdrop that it just brings that home. You can't help but walk outside the door, be affected by the climate, and start to think about the things you're going through and reflecting upon that. Because every room that you go into, every classroom that you go into, will be offering you something different from a very different perspective. And the content in the room in itself, in some ways, is a great avenue for you to get to know yourself better. And it gives you the time and the space to do that. People who attend the Paddy often talk about having a Paddy moment.
A Paddy moment it goes beyond just learning. It's
is this spontaneous, beautiful, joyous, passionate exchange or connection that happens. It's often a learning epiphany.
A Paddy moment is a eureka during class.
Or it's this thing, this burning need you've had, suddenly someone fills it. Someone points you in the right direction.
That moment can be many different things for many different people. You get all these people in this big melting pot, like-minded people, who are all there for free exchange of ideas. It could be just listening to the way a teacher delivers something that you've never thought about that perspective before. It could be walking down the hallway on New Year's Eve. It could be having a defrag after a class with somebody else that you've just done a class with from Germany and you're from Spain. It could be any number of these things, but it's going to be unexpected.
People learn things here that they did not expect to learn. And maybe those are some of the best moments here.
My interpretation of that is I found my family. Many people have the same feeling of I finally feel like I'm home, or I feel a connection with like-minded people. That's only going to be for some people, but for some people it might be something else. It might be purely that you meet someone that you become best friends with forever. doesn't have to be combat related, I guess is my answer. There's my answer. It's somewhere in there. It doesn't have to be about combat. I think the biggest impact that the Paddy workshop has had on either dramatic combat or HEMA or movement in general has been the outcomes of this coming together of a free exchange of ideas. I think it's just a ripple. I don't think it has changed anything overnight. It's been a constant, slow offering of a way of thinking. People go away from this workshop, it filters into their life, they come back, they re-energize with the information, and it just becomes like a compound growth.
I think Scottie has brought diversity fundamentally to the workshop. And I say that having been at the workshop for 2 decades and seeing the difference on where it started to where it is now. I think whether it's diversity of field and how the different teachers in different fields come in, or gender or approach, it's been an amazing change for the better, and I love it.
When I see people from HEMA or Western martial arts sitting in a dramatic combat class, frantically taking notes, or people from intimacy classes taking HEMA classes, or vice versa, where this free exchange of ideas happen, I just find it electric. And you cannot help but wonder how that information will be felt somewhere else in the world. I think one of the reasons why it's so significant for me is that a lot of the experiences that have happened here for people, or people's Paddy's moments, have given me deep joy because I feel like I've consciously tried to create a platform for that to take place, for change to take place. I had this image that maybe 10 years ago the IOSP wouldn't have ever seen intimacy direction at the Paddy Crean. And I think going forward, as I step away as the artistic director, it might behoove us to imagine that there could be more pillars that we haven't even discovered yet.
When Scott Witt teaches, I know that something interesting is about to happen.
When Scott Witt teaches, it's the experience of frantic agreement.
When Scottie teaches, someone's going to end up with a red nose.
When Scott Witt teaches, he is a joy to be around.
When Scottie teaches, it's easier than it seems.
When Scott Witt teaches, I feel like a clown.
When Scottie teaches, it's harder than it seems.
When Scott Witt teaches, rubber chickens come out, ladders fall on people, bells are rung.
Ting.
He's a clown.
You are appreciative of his simplicity.
I'm in awe of someone who operates on a different playing field.
I see kangaroos dancing on point.
When Scott Witt teaches, I actually learn something. It's true.
When Scottie teaches, it's challenging and life-changing, life-altering in terms of career and life.
Scottie taps into the mind of his students through sheer understanding and empathy. And that's something that's God-given. I don't think it's something that can be cultivated to the extent he has it. I think it's one of his sheer talents.
I guess I'm at a place that I'm in a place of sadness because I know I'm leaving, but I know I can always come back. But I feel like over the last 10 or 11 years that I've been helping to navigate this particular heavy ship. How does it make me feel? I guess I'm feeling a little bit sad at the moment because I've been involved with it for about 11 years. One example of what the Paddy Crean workshop means to me personally is I had a participant come up to me yesterday after class and thank me for allowing us to have a welcoming, gender-neutral environment. I cannot imagine in a fight workshop 5-10 years ago that we'd even have that conversation at the start of it. And I have had a number of people at this workshop come up to me. So when I think back 20 years ago to the culture that was happening at that time, to see that journey. Another one was entertaining the idea at the end of a speech, maybe 2 Paddies ago, just reminding us that we can have fight directors, that you don't have to be a female fight director, and the impact that had on participants who attended that time. Certainly in the role of artistic director, I have worked quietly hard in the background to generate a platform that can allow change to happen. And I feel like after the last 20 years, that's been a big shift from 20 years ago. So for us to have an environment where people can come together and share ideas, they don't have to be combative ideas. They can be larger conversation. Here, give it to them. Oh.
Ah!
Yeah. Have you got it?